Maybe you can help solve some confusion I'm having on the situation in Ukraine. I understand they need weapons, the Ukrainians, to fight the Russians. They're getting them from various sources around the world. Some suggest that we're waging a proxy war against the Russians by giving them weapons. Many upset, some happy that we hadn't given them aircraft, jet fighters for a long, long time. There's always an ongoing debate about that. We've given them certain munitions, but we haven't given them others, I guess the fundamental point. And now it's a question of long range weapons. So we give them the long range weapons, and I drew a parallel. This is like taking money from the federal government. Anytime you take money from the federal government that they previously took from you from your paycheck, it comes back with strings attached. So we are telling the Ukrainian army what they can and cannot do with any given weapon system, including whether or not they can launch them into Russia. I mean, doesn't that, it goes beyond proxy war. Aren't we then directing the military activities of Ukrainian forces?
Well, we are dangerously close to that, and we're way past the point of sort of proxy war. It is flat out absolute proxy war, and there's been proxy wars, for many decades. I mean, really
Of course.
centuries going back with various countries, but specifically between the United States slash the West and Soviet Union slash Russia. It's been going back, ever since the end of World War II. What distinguishes this one from the only time that this has happened so far is that for the first time, one of the sides, us, is actually enabling an attack directly on the territory and killing the soldiers and people directly on the other side as a result. That's never happened before. It's always been like in Afghanistan or in Syria or any Vietnam, anywhere else. But now then we are doing that, and that's definitely how it's being regarded on the Russian side, and why I'm urging significant restraint in what we're doing, because there's no value in taking these steps to just kind of dip your toe in the water by shooting some things deep into Russia, because all it's going to do is anger them and make them consider expanding the war, but it will not, and I want to reinforce this, have any positive impact on the course of the war for the Ukraine side. So it's all risk, no reward.
Well, and that's the point that I think needs to be hammered home. If the Ukrainian forces had unlimited men and women willing to fight, which we obviously they're running into a problem now in terms of the availability
Right.
of soldiers, and they also had an unlimited supply of munitions that they could launch anywhere, and of course of all shapes, sizes, and varieties. Then perhaps going after Russian forces in Russia before they get to Ukraine could be a valuable strategy, but they don't have either of those at their disposal. So, to your point, this would be like a one off, sort of like a terrorist act. It would be maybe they'd hit a valuable target or make a symbolic gesture, but it would serve only to piss the Russians off. That's really where we are in the final analysis.
Yeah, I think that's right. And to carry your point a little bit further, if when this war had started, it had been two equally matched sides, and the Ukraine side said, "Hey, you've invaded my country. I'm going to actually try to do the same into your country. You're shooting here. I'm going to shoot there." That's fair game. That's just how war works, So there's no problem with that. The reason why there's an issue here is because number one, it's coming late in the process, and all of these attacks are coming by the United States or by the Western countries, specifically going into targets that are inside of Russia, which is almost certainly manned and operated or enabled by Western military personnel. The
Oh,
Ukraine side doesn't have the capacity and the knowledge how to operate these things. If it's just Ukraine, and they've been doing that, by the way, they've been attacking into Russia really for the better part of a couple of years in various places, and it hasn't raised any problems. The reason why this is a problem is because it is U.S./NATO weapons enabled by NATO soldiers. That's what distinguishes it.
so are you telling me that we have boots on the ground there operating these weapons systems under, let's say, under the direction of some general in the Ukrainian military? Are
That
they on?
that part's unclear. We're intentionally vague on that. In fact, nobody admits it. But look, these sophisticated weapon systems can't be run by somebody who doesn't know what they're doing or have a significant infrastructure from technology and space-based assets, et cetera, to be able to get them on target. Ukraine doesn't possess those. So if they hit on target, then that by definition means that somebody else did it. And of course, the NATO side is mum on who that is, but it's self-evident that that's the case. And some reports coming out confirm that that is the case.
Well, are the French military putting boots on the ground? I seem to have read that the other day. Are they really getting
They have
that step?
trainers and
Oh, it's like
advisors.
advisors. Advisors in Vietnam is how it all
Yeah,
started.
exactly. You can't get past that parallel, and it's just as stupid here, frankly.
Well, that ends up involving NATO countries, even if we don't want them to. I mean, I'm not sure what our administration has talked to over with in terms of details with the French administration. I suppose France is free to do what it wants, but doesn't this end up risking bringing in all NATO related countries into the
Well,
conflict?
that's been one of the biggest questions that's been swirling around over the last really a month or so. What is Article 5? What triggers it? What doesn't trigger it? And there's been lots of debate. Even one of the Baltic countries who's actually contemplating sending troops into Western Ukraine to help with some of the other tasks, whatever that means. They're saying, but now we understand that if there's any casualties here, that doesn't trigger Article 5 because we weren't attacked. Article 5 is supposed to be if you're attacked by another country, not if you insert troops on your own into a combat zone and they get killed. So we need to be crystal clear on we will not follow an Article 5 if you choose on your own any NATO country to go fight against Russia in the territory where there's an active war going on. We can't get sucked into a war over that.
Well, our interpretation of Article 5 does not necessarily mean it's Vladimir Putin's interpretation of Article 5. So if he sees a NATO country involved in launching missiles into his country, might he view that, regardless of how we view it, as an act of war and then, well,
Yeah.
maybe unleash a nuclear arsenal?
Well, let me ask you this. What would any American president think if a Russia or a China were to strike any target on American soil and claim, well, this is self-defense because of XYZ? We could care less what they say. If a Chinese missile lands on American soil, I assure you there will be a response. Why do we think that Russia wouldn't do that? Why do we think that Russia would self-deter and allow that to continue to happen without taking some sort of retaliatory strikes? And so far they haven't. There's been a few strikes already, and they haven't done that, but they have said that they may strike outside of Ukraine against British territory, for example, if their missiles are used. And that implies us as well. And a lot of Americans are saying it's a bluff. Don't do it. Adam Kinzinger published a CNN article, said, call Putin's bluff. He ain't going to do it. It's not serious. And they're risking war over arrogance, over assuming that they'll never do what we would do under similar circumstances. And that's a bad bet.
Well, your comment about if China or Russia launched a military attack, a missile onto U.S. soil, I'm sorry if any one of the last four presidents of the United States were presidents of either of those countries, they go around launching missile strikes on people in any given random country they want in the name of killing a terrorist because I've identified evil bad man. I know where he is, and I've got the technology to blow him up on a moment's notice, even though we haven't declared war in any one of the lands on which we've done that. Note, however, we don't do it on nuclear-powered countries.
Well, and they're wisely so up to this point. But now that all of a sudden that wisdom is starting to go wobbly because we are thinking about using or allowing our stuff to be used against a nuclear territory country on their land. And it's just as stupid now as it would have been if any of those other guys had done it.